Something is moving in the fog.
Who's there?
Something not quite human.
Who is that?
In Halloween, John Carpenter created a night of absolute fear. Now, he has conjured an evil so intense, not even the dawn can drive it away. The Fog, a study in unrelenting terror. Rated R.
Well, it's that time of year. Nope, not Christmas time, but it is David's favorite time of the year. We're inching towards Shocktober, and we're actually going to start it a little bit early this year. Welcome back to ReconCinema. I'm John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's right. We're starting Shocktober just a smidge early. We have another little special surprise in early October that may not be of the horror genre that we're going to squeeze in there. So we talked to our Mr. John Carpenter, and we asked his official approval if we could start outside of Shocktober. He said absolutely. So
it's going to roll in.
Yeah, it's going to roll in like the fog.
The Fog. Oh. Yes.
So it's time. We've spoken about a lot of Mr. Carpenter's early works already. We've covered Assault on Precinct 13. We've covered Halloween. We've covered Escape from New York. We're gonna work in the one that got away, and it's The Fog here this week. I'm excited to talk about it. The Fog.
The Fog. Have we done The Thing yet? Did we talk about?
No, we're saving that for a very special time.
I feel like
that's a big one.
Yeah.
I talk about The Thing every day, so probably you're just used to that.
Yeah.
Sitting around the studios, batting around ideas, and I just keep pitching The Thing over and over and over.
But what about The Thing?
What about if there's this group of scientists in the ice and no, all right. Okay, yeah, well, we've got a really exciting month of October coming up. We've got a lot of special guests who are going to be joining us. Some cool programming coming your way, so definitely stay tuned and check it out in the coming weeks. We're real excited about it. But today, like I said, we're going to talk about The Fog. Brent, you were probably the longest running horror aficionado here of the three of us. What's your earliest memory of The Fog? When was the first time you saw it or heard about it?
Pretty early on. I remember the poster when it came out, or probably not exactly when it came out, but I remember the poster when I'd walk through the video stores. I remember the VHS cassette cover.
Which one was that?
It's the image of Jamie Lee Curtis, I think, like right at the door with it kind of creaked open and the light and the fog kind of coming in. But I remember that from, basically the early days of walking around the video store looking for movies, even before I knew really what was going on, because it was pretty early on.
Yeah, that's the good poster. That's the poster I like. I'm used to that one as well.
Yeah. What is the other one? I don't even know if I know.
There's I saw poster. A couple that were just like, the word The Fog kind of in different formats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of that's starting to ring a bell.
Right. There's like, I think one of the DVD covers is just like them, like you see the pirates in the fog with the glowing eyes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm old, so everything that I talk about is like original. It's not reprint.
David, what about you? Are you a newcomer to The Fog, or did you catch it when we were growing up?
No, I'd never seen this.
Never
seen it until recently. So yeah, this is one of those movies. John Carpenter.
What kind of expectations did you have going into it?
Oh, I thought it'd be scary. No, I don't know. I thought this might be, a lot of fun, to be honest with you. And I ended up actually really enjoying this way more than I thought. and ranking and moving into Carpenter like rankings and stuff. Like, oh, I was like, this is really up there to me. So, yeah, I mean, I was confusing the plot of The Fog with the mid 2000 aughts, The Mist, because I'm like, aren't they in a mall and there's monsters coming through? But no,
they're at a grocery store. But yeah,
oh, grocery store, sure, yeah. So, which I didn't see that movie, but I knew what the plot of that is. That just seems like identical, like in a sense, but
it's not. But they're good companion pieces for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They inform each other. So this had a lot more story going on to it that I appreciated a lot. Like there's not there's enough revealed to the audience to give you like, you kind of have a sense of like why things are happening and what's going on. I like that a lot. Like I was really happy with that, because if it was just like mysterious bullshit, like I don't know how much I'd like it. But this has like a story like to it that and a lore that I can get behind. So yeah, big fan. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they definitely spend some time kind of giving you the backstory and laying out like how and why this is happening. So it's pretty clear. We'll talk about that too shortly here.
Yeah,
I'm also a relative newcomer to seeing this all the way through. I mean, I've known about it forever. Brent, like you, I remember seeing that poster of Jamie Lee like blocking the door and everything growing up. I didn't see, but for some reason, and I fell in love with Carpenter in late high school, but for some reason, The Fog just kind of eluded me. That I was all about, Halloween and Escape from New York and The Thing, Christine. But this one I missed out on, and I didn't see it until I think it was 2001 when I was producing one of it. This is back in College of Santa Fe, RIP. I was producing I can't remember if it was a short film or a super, super low budget feature that, do you remember Wes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That he was writing and directing. And we were in this little town called Vaughn, New Mexico. And I was prepping. I was basically producer and some kind of an AD. Like I was doing the call sheet. So I wasn't really on set very much. Like they would go off and shoot and I'm working on the call sheet for the next day and just prepping everything. So I was like half a second AD and half a producer. So I was in the hotel and everyone was gone. And this Vaughn, New Mexico is a town with like 10 people in it, all of which are listeners to this program. So I'm sure they're tuned in right now.
Yep.
But yeah, it's this little, small town in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. And there was like one diner across the street from the one hotel in town. And there's like 3 people in it. And it was kind of creepy a little bit. But when I was in the hotel, I had the TV on. And after Barney Miller was over, The Fog came on. And it was like, oh, this is the one I haven't seen. And it was a super like low quality version, must have been like a copy of a VHS or something. But so I was really like, oh, this is terrible. And it was like pan and scan, so the image was cut off.
Oh yeah.
I was like, this is awful. Like
it had all of it working for it.
Yeah, I was like, what is Carpenter thinking? Like, what was he doing when he made this?
Well, yeah, considering he did the original in 235, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So pan and scan's just going to be a total butcher job.
Yeah. So I was totally turned off, and I was like, I'm never going to watch Fog. Forget it. And then finally, 2-3 years ago, maybe, I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let me give it another shot. And I found it somewhere like super cheap, picked it up, and I loved it. And I was like, wow, I'm glad I'm giving this another shot, because it's like a great sandwich, I'm just like, I'm after all this time, there's one more really great Carpenter movie that I'm getting to enjoy for the first time, as opposed to watching it for like the 1,000th time.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's like the first, I remember seeing it also as a kid, but only like kind of superficially, like passing, and it wasn't until we watched it for this podcast just this week that I had gotten a chance to really sit back down and watch it again. And it's a lot of fun. It was super nostalgic for some reason. Like, I feel like there's a lot of it that reminds me of other things. You know, you mentioned The Mist, David, which I'm a huge fan of. I think that movie, like Frank Darabont's movie, especially if you watch it in black and white, like it's got, it's pretty rad. So you should definitely not just dismiss it. But also it reminded me of like Creepshow, not only because of like the cast, but just even like the kind of ghost scenes, like those cut scenes when they come in with the ghost remind me of some of the tricks that they did in Creepshow. And then, you know, just like certain things like that kind of just all took me back. And even parts of it, I was like, reminded me of, you know what, or I Know What You Did Last Summer, just like the kind of hook in the hand thing. Mm-hmm. And so there are elements of this movie, which is before any of them, that kind of, for whatever reason, touch on bits of those other movies that kind of all kind of brought me back into some kind of nostalgic, vat of fun. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it this time around as well.
Yeah, and we sure do love us some old school Carpenter, and this one just slides right in there. So much of his work all the way through the 80s, really, and then maybe one or two in the 90s, just so fantastic. And it's so awesome that he's gotten so much respect and status kind of gained again in the last maybe 10 years or so, that everyone's really come back around on him. And, you know, other than the obvious ones like The Thing and Halloween, it's just, some of the other movies like Assault and The Fog, people are really turned on by those movies again. So yeah, it's really awesome.
What do you guys think? Do you think that this might be his most like atmospheric and moody movie that he's made? Like, it feels like it's just like a super moody kind of like film. And I'm trying to think through, like, there's definitely elements in all of his movies, but this one just seemed to be like riddled throughout.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely one of the heavier ones with the mood. I mean, I don't know, all those early ones, especially, really, he was so good at setting that tone.
Yeah.
You know, like Escape from New York is just all in darkness, and the Thing being just in the total opposite of blinding white, but still this feeling of true like horror there.
Yeah.
And like Halloween having this sense, I guess Halloween for me is the closest to this one, where this sense of impending doom that's coming, just like Michael Myers just slowly rolling through town.
Yeah. Well, and the score seems related, like not, they're not the same, but there's definitely reminiscent of each other.
Yeah. He's got 7 notes in this score as opposed to the 5 in Halloween.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this is just another one of his movies. It's like there's a claustrophobia, like, right, like just like something's closing in on you, and you have it's coming for you, and there's not much you can do to stop it. Yeah. And
right,
a force of nature's coming. But I really do enjoy the fact that it's like there's something that having a lore and a backstory to it to really just like, kind of explain it. Not that you need it, but I just think that really helps the film, like, yeah, so much, because it's, how much can you really say about like Michael Myers, like what's his real motivation and all of that, or just, the Thing is it's just a random force of nature, an alien creature or whatever, like it's just all this. But like, well, no, this is like a revenge story. You can almost you can get behind the pirates or whatever,
yeah,
the sailors,
the
sailor. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like dig it. Like,
they're completely the victims.
They're justified. They're justified in their hunt.
Yeah, so it's not like they're evil. It was just like sort of like just trying to survive them. I kind of dug it. Like, it's less about like it's a more nuanced to give you that lore to the whole thing. and people in the present are paying for the sins of what happened 100 years ago.
Right.
Also on my birthday, in fact, it's funny.
Oh, hey. All right.
Secrets revealed here on ReconCinema.
Tony Danza, Iggy Pop, myself, April 21st.
All the best.
You share with
best.
the Danza?
Me and Danza.
Oh,
the day after Hitler. So anyway,
okay.
You win some, you lose some.
Well, it's the day after.
It's the day after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a new day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about John Carpenter and where we stand in 1980. So Halloween has come out, and obviously he's just kind of basking in that success that he really didn't see coming with that movie. It was such, that movie was such a, I don't know, like surprise for everybody that no one expected it to be the gigantic hit that it was, and this sort of industry changing movie. I mean, we talked about it a number of times on our Friday the 13th podcast, all of which you can hear in the archives at www.ReconCinema.com, where we talk about Halloween's success spinning off the whole slasher subgenre of horror films.
Right.
And really just launching so many careers and so many good and bad movies after it. But Carpenter himself was surprised by the whole thing. And he's not the kind of filmmaker who's in it like strictly to just make blockbusters and make money. He was very passionate about the kinds of stories he wanted to tell. And as you can see, what choices he made through his career, he stuck with that you could go and do this Hollywood movie and just for the paycheck and make a ton of money, or you make Christine, or you make Big Trouble in Little China, or They Live. So he's kind of carved out his own little corner of Hollywood that's just for him. So,
well, and is this his follow-up from Halloween?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
he's got like a 2-picture deal, right? And this is the first of the two.
yes. So
It's
yeah,
and then Escape.
Yes, he signs a 2-picture deal with Avco Embassy. Like you said, the second of which would be Escape from New York. And at the same time, he's also kind of developing Halloween 2. And there's a whole controversy with Mustafa Akkad and Dino De Laurentiis and what Carpenter was allowed to do, and some deal making that would free him up a little bit. But so this is, he decides, like, what if we made like a just straight out ghost story? Go back to the well. Like, what's the traditional scary story? Well, ghost stories. That's kind of the old tradition. And he and his partner at the time, Deborah Hill, were on a vacation. It was either a vacation or they were off in Europe promoting either Halloween or Assault on Precinct 13, and they were visiting Stonehenge. And while they were there, they just saw this fog just rolling in, and he just had this idea of like, what if there was something in the fog? Like, how scary would that be?
There's got to be more to it, right? Like Stonehenge, obviously, with its own sort of set of mysticism and mystique, right?
Sure, yeah, but I mean, that was just kind of the genesis of the basic idea of it.
And I think there were some literary things as well that kind of influenced some of that as at the same time, I think.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, but I don't recall what the names of the stories are, but I think there were a few stories that he had read or articles that he had read, and then seeing the fog kind of helped tie it all together.
Well, yeah, and he also kind of, as he gets this idea, he wants to infuse sort of an Edgar Allan Poe feel and an H.P. Lovecraft kind of energy into the story as well, which I feel like he did pretty well. But Stonehenge would come back into play all the way down the road with Halloween 3, which we also discussed. Was that last year? That was last year, I think, back in season 3. So
wasn't long enough.
Stonehenge. Oh, that's right. They had the big stone and they're making the masks.
Oh yeah. Everything was based off Stonehenge, the energy from Stonehenge. So
that's right.
So he sets off and writes this story, and it all comes together pretty quickly. So It's how do you feel about the story itself? Do you guys feel like, we talked about the lore and how cool it was to set a whole backstory and really explain it quite thoroughly of what was happening here. Did you guys feel like that was clear, or was there any confusion about why this is happening? Did it make sense for you?
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. It's got enough to fill in all the gaps of like why this can happen, and there's nothing these people can do about it other than try to survive. Like I think that was great. Like there's inevitability about it. Like there's something I like more about this that explains sort of the forces of nature that he otherwise pulls in like The Thing, or even, I mean, Michael Myers is sort of just a force of nature. Like there's no negotiating with it, but like this is like there's a reason these things happen. People made this happen.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have known that like 100 years later. But I like that. It's like, it's because this is my problem with like Stephen King and all of that. It's just like, well, evil just happens and people die and there's nothing you can do. And and like I get that, and as in a real world kind of situation, that happens all the time, right? People just die, disease, accident, car accidents, whatever, things happen, people die, it sucks. I don't like relating to actual reality, and then in the scope of like supernatural. I don't want supernatural to be an inevitability, but if something causes that, if something is going to it's a revenge story, for a bunch of sailors, like tell the story from their point of view. They gotta get their pound of flesh. I love that.
The fact that Father Malone finds his grandfather's journal, that kind of lays it all out there in a nice, easily digestible, convenient way. Is great, right? Like it allows you the opportunity to use that throughout. Whenever there's a question, you can be like, oh, let me just read the next chapter here. But it works, like it totally, like to your point, like I'm buying it, I'm into it. It doesn't throw me, I think that it's for what purpose it's serving, like it works great.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It was a very clear, thank God that he had written everything down in that journal.
Yeah.
Step by step, exactly what happened.
So detailed.
Yeah. But it works, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It's like it is a ghost story, right? Like it's always about, a spirit or needing to continue on for X, Y, and Z reasons. And enough time passes, well, it's gonna be a bunch of innocent victims that are just a part of it. I'm not a big fan of like ghost stories in a sense, but actually watching this movie, I was like, well, just to have an actual like through line and an arc in a sense of like what happened. Like, oh, really, I kind of dig it.
It's really only 6 victims, right?
Yeah,
and only 6, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that's the thing about John Carpenter movies that I try to explain to non-horror fans, that John Carpenter's movies go beyond just a straight horror movie. Like there's always a lot more going on. There's a much greater richness and a deeper storyline to what's happening there. It's not just a straight boring kind of slasher movie or alien movie or whatever. That there's so much style to it and thought put into it, that I would recommend all of them really in a lot of ways, through the 80s and into the early 90s. But
there's a bit more gore in this one than there is in Halloween. I mean, Halloween's like kind of implied gore, right? But like
this one
it still doesn't feel like it's that gory. I mean,
no, not at all.
I mean, there's like imagery, like, okay, one of the initial sailors who was on the boat that met with the fog, like he pops out and his eyes have been gouged out or whatever, but it's quick. And then there's like kind of some scenes where there's like worms crawling on a dead seaman's, like face or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't really think that. I think you're right. I think it is mostly implied here as well. but it you know, it sells it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that was part of the thing with this movie, is that there isn't a lot of gore. Like you said, it is mostly implied. There's a touch more. Carpenter doesn't really get gory until The Thing, and that is definitely for a reason in that movie. I mean, you kind of have to have it in that story.
Yeah. I feel like Assault on 13 was pretty gory.
I think there's blood just because there's people getting shot all the time. But
yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It's not like horror movie gore. It's like pretty brutal.
Right.
But you know, I get your point completely.
Yeah. But thematically, you know, Halloween was about pure evil, whereas The Fog is about revenge. And you know, and he based this off. I guess something similar happened off the California coast near Goleta. That very similar, that a pirate ship that was, you know, everyone was infected with leprosy, was trying to, you know, dock in the coast near this coastal town, and they were killed. They weren't let, you know, and then they weren't let on land, and they were killed, and their gold was stolen and used to create this town, which is what happens here in Antonio Bay. As we hear, nobody in the town today, 100 years later, knows about this. This is all like died with the people who were there at the time, but it's revealed through Father Malone and the great Hal Holbrook, you know, telling us the story as he reads the journal. So, yeah, great backstory, makes sense. All falling in line with the 100th, you know, and birthday celebration. And let's talk about some of this cast, because this is like key Carpenter, the Carpenter Players, the John Carpenter quartet, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously there's a ton of them, right? So there's Adrienne Barbeau and you know, who I think they were married at the time.
Yeah, Carpenter was with Deborah Hill, and then at some point,
not
during someone to watch over me, I think made some kind of shift over to Adrienne Barbeau. They've since gotten married, and I just want to say it must have been very, very tough for Deborah Hill, who continued to work with Carpenter, but both of them, and I think just from some of what I was reading, that it seemed like she just kind of gutted it out and you know, played through it. But man, that had to be tough to kind of watch that a lot of the time. And in seeing the promotion, Adrienne Barbeau is just like talking about how it was hard for them to work together because they're newlyweds, and you know, there's just so much attraction between the two of them at the time. Like, oh my God, Deborah Hill had to sit through that. Poor her.
Yeah, she's like sitting right off camera.
Yeah,
like listening to this.
Yeah,
that is torture.
But Adrienne Barbeau's, I think, fantastic in this movie. This is her kind of transition out of TV, which she was a significant 70s TV star, out into features, and great character also for someone who barely has any scenes with another actor.
Right. I mean, this is her first movie, right? This is her first feature-length film.
Yeah. But she's kind of guiding us through the movie as the radio DJ in the lighthouse, who's able to see what's going on and is sort of the voice of communication and sort of represents the viewer a little bit.
Yeah.
So fantastic. And of course, you get Jamie Lee Curtis back, who's, you know, skyrocketing to stardom, but still at this point doing, you know, I guess, you know, they did call her the Scream Queen for a long, long time.
That was all because of 1980. I mean, granted, like Halloween had happened, but like you pile that on with The Fog and then Prom Night and then Terror Train all in 1980.
And Halloween 2.
Aside from the Halloween franchise, those are like, it's the Halloween franchise, and those three movies are the horror movies that she's been in. And now at this point, the Halloween franchise, she's been in like what, 7 of them? 7 of the 7 of
today? Yeah, something like that.
6 of the movies. So But yeah, absolutely. After 1980, if she wasn't already the Scream Queen from Halloween, like she definitely solidified her position in as the lead queen of the Scream Queens.
Yeah, but it's interesting that I would say she's, because of Halloween, I don't know, maybe you would expect her to be more the star. She's on the poster, but she's really not the main character.
Yeah, she's like the fifth character
Right.
in the movie.
I mean, it is really an ensemble, group of actors here.
Oh yeah, I mean, this cast is made up of like just a ton of great character actors, like across the board.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, this is like, as an ensemble movie, it's like, I guess you have to pick the youngest, hottest, in terms of popularity or whatever. She's coming into her own with her career. Like, we'll put Jamie Lee Curtis on the thing. It's one woman versus a creature. Like that. Well, how do you tell the story that quickly? But if you put a bunch of randos in the movie, this ensemble, like, you need. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like gimmicky marketing, to just like use her as the representation of the movie on that poster. But
right,
she's just sort of she's just going through it with the rest of them. No one's like the superhero of it. That everyone does something that like to help them survive. But
right,
I that's what I love about this. There's not even like a clear like lead to the movie. There's not a clear like, oh well, thank God they're there. Like, all of this could have happened if plus or minus any number of characters in the movie. I just think it's, again, that ghost story element. Like I'm down with this. Like I was really happy with this one.
Yeah, and it plays out in the climax of the movie. Like all of them are together. Like even though Adrienne Barbeau's character is off somewhere else, like they're all battling together at the end. Like it's the whole ensemble is kind of thrown in at the last second together, to kind of overcome the ghosts.
Well,
how cool is it? How cool is it
they-
that Jamie Lee Curtis gets to act with her mom in this?
I know, and
That's so cool.
it's the first time they appeared on screen together, although they don't really interact. Like they're in shots together, but they're not mother and daughter. Like that was a thing that, they didn't want to be mother and daughter here. That I think Jamie Lee knew like this wasn't the project to do that move on. That, so probably something more dramatic down the road was what she was hoping for. And I think that they did. I can't remember what movie offhand, but
yeah, they're not even on screen together except for the last like 20 minutes of the movie,
right?
Which is not even 20 minutes. That's probably being generous. It's probably 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, is it Halloween? Is it H2O where she plays Jamie Lee Curtis's mom or something like that? I feel like Janet Leigh's got a small appearance in the early part of H2O, but maybe I'm wrong. But I'm sure one of our listeners will write in and correct me if that's true. But
well, we'll get to it at some point.
We will. Yeah. A few years down the road, but we get Tom the Man Atkins returns to ReconCinema.
Sans the mustache, which I don't like, and not the white hair. He's got like brown hair and no mustache. It's still Tom Atkins. He still kills it, but it wasn't like quintessential, it wasn't quintessential Tom.
Yeah.
So, but he's still great.
Yeah. And apparently that was a role that was originally offered to Kurt Russell.
No way. Really?
Yeah. So it would have been interesting. I really wonder, seeing Kurt Russell and Jamie Lee Curtis kind of coupled up there together would have been interesting. I don't think they ever kind of crossed paths. Both children of Carpenter never worked together.
I think I'm glad it's not. I mean, hey, listen, the more Kurt, the better, but I'm glad it's not. I think it changes the dynamic of this movie completely if you have Kurt Russell in here, right? Like,
I agree. Yeah.
He's because he's a big star already. Like he's a well-known, he's the computer wore tennis shoes. Like he's been around for a minute, And even though he went off for a little bit, and it wasn't until a little bit later that he really started to skyrocket. But I think I don't know. I'm glad it's Tom. I'm glad it's Tom,
Yeah.
honestly.
And I think, Kurt has a different kind of screen presence than Tom Atkins does. Tom is much more of a character actor and not necessarily your traditional leading man, which Kurt Russell would be. So
Absolutely.
when you have an ensemble, I think for this, Tom Atkins was the better fit. Although if Atkins and Kurt had to fight it out, I think that would be a nuclear explosion and the world wouldn't be able to continue.
Yeah, it's a what is it? Unstoppable force and immovable object.
The irresistible force meeting the immovable object, for sure.
Yeah.
The irresistible force.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is that right?
He's irresistible.
I'm quoting Gorilla Monsoon. So
Got it.
We haven't even talked. So I know we're talking cast, but this isn't a skip over, but we got to mention John Houseman, who's basically starts the movie off with his kind of scary tale of, and I'm like, dude, I'm in. Like, I'd listen to that guy tell a ghost story around a fire.
Hell yeah.
Any day of the week.
That was awesome.
No matter what. I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
We can stay up past midnight.
And it doesn't get any more traditional than that, telling a ghost story around a campfire. It's such a basic premise, but completely works. He's such a captivating actor and such a great voice. And I think he did this all, like, they did it on stage, I think in like one day. So
wow.
Yeah. Great addition to the movie for sure.
Big fan.
I thought so in that scene, at the opening scene, when he's telling the story, we meet Adrienne Barbeau's kid for the first time,
right?
Andy or whatever. When I first saw him, I couldn't stop thinking that it was the kid from the Explorers, Jason.
Oh yeah,
I think his name's Jason Faison. He's the third kid in the Explorers, the one that nobody ever really talks about. Not Ethan Hawke or River Phoenix, but the other guy. For the first 30 minutes of the movie, I was like, dude, is that the kid? And then I looked it up. No, it's not the kid, but totally thought it was. Sorry. Side tangent.
Who else we got in this movie? We've got a lot of the, smaller character actors. We've got Charles Cyphers, who's in so many of Carpenter's films. We've got Nancy Loomis, who appeared in Assault on Precinct 13 and Halloween 2, Halloween 3, actually, and a few others. But George Buckflower, who shows up in most of the 80s Carpenter movies as one of the three sailors that get attacked early in the movie.
Well, and are you catching the names of the characters that these guys are playing?
Oh yeah.
Like Tom Atkins plays Nick Castle. So for those who don't know, Nick Castle is the guy who played Michael Myers in The Mask, right? And then George Flower plays Tommy Wallace, who Tommy Lee Wallace is a big partner of Carpenter's, who ultimately ended up directing Halloween 3, which we talked about, and It and things like that. So that's littered in here.
There's so much inside baseball happening here. Dan O'Bannon is who Charles Cyphers plays. He's like the weatherman that Adrienne Barbeau's character Stevie kind of flirts with at back at the station. So Dan O'Bannon wrote Alien. He wrote co-starred in Dark Star with John Carpenter. So they have a connection, and I think there's a few others too, but
there are
a lot of inside baseball here.
Well, have we mentioned Hal Holbrook? He's in this. He's also Father Malone. He's excellent.
How awesome is he's one of those actors, kind of like we talked about with Gene Hackman, just always good. No matter what the movie is, that dude is just an excellent actor, or was. He just recently passed away, but was so great in so many of these movies. Yeah.
And for those keeping track, that means that there are three people, Adrienne Barbeau, Tom Atkins, and Hal Holbrook, who were in Creepshow.
Yeah. There's very much a Creepshow vibe happening here. Like
definitely.
Those two movies feel very connected. And I think intentionally that he's also kind of trying to capture that feel of those old pulp, Tales from the Crypt comic books.
Yep. Totally.
Darwin Jostin's in the film, who is one of the lead actors in Assault on Precinct 13, who I don't really remember seeing much after this movie, but it was really cool to see his face kind of pop up as the coroner. But yeah, just and of course Janet Leigh, who's the original Scream Queen.
That's right.
Star of Psycho, and of course Jamie Lee's mother. Doesn't do a heck of a lot in the movie, but is definitely a presence and part of the group that's all kind of corralled inside the church defending themselves.
Yeah, I feel like either Janet Leigh or her assistant, which I think is the Sandy character, right? Like one of those two characters is probably not necessary for this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they're a little redundant. I don't understand exactly what purpose both of them need to serve, but whatever. I kind of feel as if like Sandy was probably the original character that was written into the script, and then Janet like signed on to be in the movie to do something with Jamie, and they're like, oh, what are we gonna do? Oh, we'll do this.
She'll just be there.
Yeah, that's total make believe. I did not read that or find that anywhere, but it kind of seems like a throw on character.
Yeah, definitely. And probably I could see that being where he just didn't want to cut the part once Nancy Loomis, who I think at the time may have been married to Tommy Lee Wallace, so very much a part of that Carpenter family. Didn't want to cut the part out, so she remains and survives even. So,
Well, it's like those those long stories, those TV movie miniseries and stuff like that. Like, oh, an asteroid's gonna hit Earth, or there's an earthquake, or even The Stand, kind of even just like as like the TV movie of The Stand and shit. It's all these like disjointed characters who are all living at the same time while that stuff is going on, and then it all just kind of comes together. Like,
right,
that
their
eventually
paths cross. Eventually, they
eventually come together. So you have to you invest separately in all these characters until they combine. I mean, this is this. All of this really makes a lot of sense in terms of like the size of the town and all of that, but it just reminded me of how do you feature all these characters and keep them separate but have them all dealing with the same thing? And like I think it's expertly done here with just like bring them all together eventually. And even though Adrienne Barbeau still never leaves the lighthouse, but like she is like the hero of it, because she's like advising everybody like what to do and how to survive and all that.
I get the purpose she serves by never leaving the lighthouse, but I will say the one thing that kind of bumped me a little bit is when she's on the radio after she's said, Andy, run, you need to run. And then we cut back to Tom Atkins. He's like saving her son and all that stuff. And then we go back to Adrienne, and she's like spilling her heart out into the microphone about why she couldn't leave. And it's like, I don't know. I think you could have left to go save your kid, but I get it. It's okay. That's the one thing that kind of bumped me a little. I was like, I don't know if we don't need this. This seems kind of bullshit, but
yeah, I hear you there. It feels like she does kind of like throw in the towel on her kid, like pretty quickly here. But
she would never get to him in time, right?
Yeah,
and so
she's being logical.
She's being logical. It's like, well, I'm going to use the power of the radio. Hopefully, someone's hearing him. I'm going to scream the address 100 times. Pray that works out. And then she's begging for forgiveness, right? Like she's begging for forgiveness essentially.
At that time she has no idea if her son has been saved or not, right?
Yeah, right. She has no idea. Like, so she has to believe that he could have made it, but then also like she's just like she has to say it out loud of like, well, in case you died, like this is why I couldn't because I had to save all these other people.
But why is she doing that on the radio?
Because there's no other way the phone lines are down. There's nothing she can do.
But why is she spilling her guts, apologizing to her son, who she thinks might be dead at this point, on the radio? Like, that's the part where I'm like, I don't understand why that needs to all happen.
I think it's just an emotional reaction. What else can she do? She's just
a person has to get it out.
Yeah.
I kind of dig it. Like she was just, it's this confession, this last thing. Like,
All right, I can appreciate that.
and if there was, and if that was a guy character, it would have been like totally like, I had to do it I had to save the town. I had to,
If it was Kurt Russell,
it's Kurt Russell, and it's like, oh shit, like, well, of course he's the hero of the piece because he had to,
him and his hair.
he had to.
His hair would have fought off
his hair. He would have sent his hair to save his child, and
Well,
he would have
like,
just.
Yeah, and then like I think a male character probably would have been just a little more brief about like, well, I had to do it. I had to be the hero, I got to do it. So hopefully, like she's a mother.
Yeah,
saying the mother shit. I love it.
I just think the exchange is personal, right? Like for me to like do it on radio, like cheapens it, and that's the point. Like I get why she's the hero and she has to stay and guide the town to safety.
Yeah,
because she's got the best vantage point in the lighthouse. Yeah. But like the begging for forgiveness on the radio part to me seems like, I don't know. Whatever. It's like not worth getting that bumped up on, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd have done that a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work for you. I kind of like the idea of this like naked honesty though for her. I like the idea of like, a character just sort of admitting that like, her sin is like she didn't go after her son and like he could have died and she's admitting it all and there's nothing left on the table for her, like, right, like it's all out there now. Like by the end of the movie you don't have any question of like why she did anything or why she didn't do something. Like she, I think that's great because otherwise you don't serve the character enough. Like you if she didn't do that confession or whatever, it's just sort of like, well, why did she do that? Like what I think it would cheapen her a little bit. So like this vulnerability to her. So for me, while it doesn't work for you, I think for me that makes it like even more like I get it. Like instead of like this understood idea, because if it was a male character, the male character would have explained himself. He would just be like, he would just say, I have to do this, and that would be it. Like that's how it would have been done. Mm-hmm. So the mom character, at least explains herself.
At least is
it's very anti, or not anti, but very like not so motherly, right? Like just abandoning her child in a sense. Like
and I think
extreme.
Yeah, and I think for me the expression it's not the expression that bumps me. It's the fact that she's expressing it on the radio. Like I just don't see why that part needs to be broadcast. It's not helping. At that point, it's not about like, it's a personal kind of like recognition of what you had to do to save the town, but doing it on the radio doesn't actually help save the town. You know what I mean? So it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting choice, but
sure,
it's all good.
Yeah.
In a bit of sort of what if casting here, like we were talking about earlier, what if Kurt had been cast instead of Tom Atkins? What if Donald Pleasance was was Father Malone instead of Hal Holbrook? Would that have worked, you think? Or would that be too kind of on the nose with Halloween?
I love Hal Holbrook, man.
Yeah, no, he's so good.
Yeah, I think that was the better choice for this role. I would have been like, it just would have felt like, like Loomis again. So
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I get like he's using a lot of his same, troupe of actors, but it's like, I think you have to diversify a little bit because then it does start, too many things start to feel familiar.
Yep.
And it makes it difficult to separate. So,
but apparently they did offer it to Christopher Lee.
Oh,
which
really?
That would have been cool.
No, Christopher Lee is
he would have had the gravitas to deliver that performance.
I still think Hal is the best choice though, because Hal, like, you just kind of automatically like love Hal Holbrook. Like, he just looks like a good guy,
Yeah, I'm not hating on Hal at all, dude. Like, he's great.
Because you're behind Father Malone, and even though he looks like possibly an alcoholic or some kind of alcohol dependency, but
All right.
you know, and probably some kind of, looks like he may have some emotional issues too, but he's revealing this story, and you want to see him get through it. I mean, he's the one who ends up really fighting the spirits off, at least temporarily. But yeah, would have been a very different take if it had been Christopher Lee.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you guys think about, one thing that bumped me was Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins just hopping right into bed immediately. But how could you not with
that's Tom Atkins style.
Yeah.
That's Tom Atkins style. It's the same shit in Halloween 3.
Yeah, it really
It doesn't matter. He's just he's got that animal magnetism, apparently.
Yeah, we're going to bed. Let's go to bed and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the potential of Kurt Russell playing that character. Like, Kurt is more the leading man, like the stereotypical leading man, than Tom Atkins. I think when you throw Tom Atkins in that situation, I found it weird here. I found it weird in Halloween 3.
Yeah.
I don't buy it for a second, but good on you, and carry on. Like, whatever. Like, but yeah, I think it's a little silly and jarring. And I feel like both scenes in both movies are set up the same. It's always like after they're kind of laying, like, you know, horizontally in the bed at 90-degree angles so that their heads are together and they're chatting, and like one of them smoking a cigarette, and it's just like, it's the same after scene in both movies. And I'm like, all right, this is like, I guess, is this Tom Atkins calling card? Is this
I guess.
I don't know.
It's like he has to do nothing to get laid in these movies. Like, it comes to him so easily. It's crazy. But you know, right when, like, Jamie Lee Curtis is a hitchhiker with kind of sounds like kind of a shady backstory, and then we find out she was basically like a rich kid who wanted to just live her own life and kind of a free spirit, right?
Like, her first question to him is like, "Are you weird? Are you weird?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm weird." And she's like, "Great." I'm like, "Okay, cool." You gotta love life rolling out of the 70s, man.
Well, that's what it is. It's like, you know, it's like matter of fact. You don't even have to do the build up of like, why would they get in bed together? It's like, well, no, they're gonna get in bed together. Like,
yeah,
it's easy.
It's the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, whatever. So, you know, it's an afterthought. Like, you gotta appreciate the fact that it's just like, well, yeah, they end up in bed together, and who cares? That's not even part of this. Now they can just get to know each other.
Yeah.
They can talk about her art or whatever, like, which is not brought up again. It's just like,
no. And it's, again, another kind of totally unnecessary, like, scene.
Yeah.
But I guess that bumped me as well. You're right, John. I guess I was more prepared for it, having seen Halloween 3.
I am.
Yeah, you knew it was coming.
I can't be bumped. I don't know. What has bumped me? Nothing.
David Munchak cannot be bumped.
This is going to be a 9.5 at the end. I don't know.
Oh my shit. That's like your highest rated movie ever.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gone above an 8. So, no, I don't know.
Somehow The Fog is David Munchak's highest rated movie.
I love it. We found it.
In the Munchapedia.
We'll see.
And
we're not there yet. Come on. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Munchak's Munchapedia.
Munchapedia?
Yeah.
That's
I think we should retire that phrase immediately.
It's like Wikipedia, but anyway, stepping away from the cast right now, I love the tone of this movie that we were talking about earlier, and so much of that is Dean Cundy's cinematography. Like we were talking about, they shot it in anamorphic and so it didn't look like a low budget horror movie. It has a bigger feel to it. You know, his lighting, especially with the fog, you know, the visual effect, you know, special effects that they were doing, I think worked great. It really made the fog feel like a character. And then using that to guide the story of taking all these separate characters and how they kind of all merge together, or most of them at least merge onto the church as sort of the Alamo. I think was so well done, mixed with Carpenter's score. Just really great horror tone and feeling. And with the visuals, it's fantastic.
Well, I've never seen a movie, and this is going to sound dumb, but I've never seen a movie where like 2-3-5 was a bad idea.
Right.
You know, like it's like anytime a movie's done in 2-3-5, I feel like that's like the right ratio for a movie. Anytime you do it, like that should be the one that you use.
And is that anamorphic? Is that what anamorphic is?
Yeah.
2-3-5 to 1. So what does that mean? What's anamorphic versus another ratio? What's the difference?
It's a wider lens, really, that just gives it a it's sort of it creates a depth and a bigger scope and feeling than your regular, your standard
16:1.
Yeah, that feels much more flat and straightforward. This really creates a depth, and when you have a cinematographer like Dean Cundy who knows how to shoot that way, that's why he's one of the best cinematographers of all time. I mean, he shot Jurassic Park and so many big movies, but starting with Carpenter. Right. There's so many visual tricks and little maneuvers that they do that is what helps. I think was a really big tool that Carpenter had in his early movies, all the way through. I think they worked together basically through Big Trouble, and then had a falling out on that film, and then never worked together after that.
Well, and in film, when you're using those kind of aspect ratios, what you're able to do is create like emotion through composition, right? And so, a big, like in the 90s, they started chopping everything up and doing pan and scan so that they would fit onto televisions sets better. And it became, like you were losing big chunks of the composition. And so that's why they started to go, when DVDs came out, they started releasing things in letterbox again, so that it was back at the original aspect ratio the filmmakers had done them at, so that you could get that emotion back.
Gotcha.
I remember when I was at Suncoast that we had the whole display of what is widescreen versus pan and scan, and why widescreen is better. That I would have to explain to these people, but like, I don't want to see those black bars at the top and bottom. Like, but you're missing half the movie. Like, look at this picture from The Abyss. Okay, here's where, like, the head, that shape's coming out of the water, and they're all face to face with it, right? Like, here's what's getting cut off, and here's what you're seeing when you don't have those black bars. But when you do, you see the whole thing that was actually what they intended when they shot it. So this is very much the same kind of way. But all right, so flash forward a little bit after the movie's been shot. Carpenter's putting it together in the editing room. They start screening it, and they realize pretty quickly, like, this movie is not working. Like, there's something off about it. It's not. Audiences were like, at test screenings were really down on it. It didn't feel right to Carpenter, so. They ended up going back and reshooting or adding in about a third of the movie. Yeah, that's right. So they added in a lot. So they added in John Houseman's whole prologue, that opening scene to the movie that wasn't originally there. A lot of the quick scares and jumps that happen and close-ups was not in the movie. They added all those in. They added the scene with Jamie Lee Curtis in the morgue, where the body comes to life, which is also kind of a little prequel to The Thing, the way that scene plays out. So, they added that. They added the lighthouse fight with Adrienne Barbeau, where she climbs up to the top and fights the two, I keep calling them pirates, but I guess that's what they were, but sailors off. And so, it really kind of fills in all these gaps that were happening in the movie, and really gives it puts it right back into that real traditional, like, horror movie. You need those scares. So
this movie is 65 minutes. And like, we should add some more shit.
Yeah, it was. Right. It was short, and they were just. I wonder what that original script was without those moments too.
I mean, there must have been stuff they just left off the cutting room. They left on the floor, right?
I don't know. I don't know if if you read this, if either of you read this as well when you were reading up on this project, but the original budget was like something like $1 million, right? Like they spent $1 million, then they redid it and added a third, and then the budget ended up only being 1.1.
Yeah.
So I'm not a mathematician, but but something there doesn't add up, right? Like if you've got $1 million budget and you got to redo a third of it, like was it 1.1?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of, especially a guy like Carpenter knows how to do things crafty and the low budget way. So I'm sure needing to also do it quickly, like, you know, the close up of that you know, that pirate with the worms coming out of his face.
Yeah.
Like you could do that in a garage. Like
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, I'm sure that they did. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like her climbing on top of the lighthouse. It's like you definitely shot that in someone's garage, in their own garage, probably.
Yeah. They just put like a quick setup and then pump fog into the room.
Right.
Yeah. It's all in black. There's nothing. There's no perspective.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
And like we said, the opening with John Houseman, that was shot in one day. So
yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
You know, that's minutes of the movie right there, just one day. So
yeah.
He's a guy who could figure out how to get that done, Carpenter. But then the movie comes out, and you know, is it a big hit? What's the follow-up to Halloween going to be for John? Well, it is a big hit. It's not that well critically acclaimed, but it does financially do pretty well. So especially with such a low budget of 1.1. So I guess we're going right towards it. Let's do some box office glory.
Let's.
Okay, so the film comes out February 1st, 1980 against American Gigolo. Now, this is still in that time period. There's not a tremendous amount of box office data, but Gigolo was number one at the box office. The Fog ends up with 21.4 million worldwide.
What?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, huge hit, huge profit. They did spend, I think, about $2 million. They spent like 3 times the budget on all the prints
marketing.
And ads and marketing. So they would put up these stands in theaters that played it that would emit all this fog,
right?
Nice. Like the lobby. So that's pretty cool. So it ends up, with $21 million. It's number 31 of 1980, right ahead of Fame. So Fame was a big movie. Remember that?
That was huge.
Yeah. Well,
That's
The Fog
musical.
does better.
Well, good for The Fog.
But yeah, so it's a hit, and it's going to lead to the second part of his deal with Avco Embassy and Escape from New York, which we covered way back in episode 1 of ReconCinema. So if you're on our website at www.ReconCinema.com, scroll all the way back 35 pages to the beginning. So you can pick up the Carpenter story kind of there where The Fog leaves off and Escape from New York picks up. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I think we all enjoyed the movie. Where do you guys rank it amongst the other Carpenter films? You know, by this point, we've seen a lot of them. David, you probably still have a few to go. But, you know, we've got Precinct 13, we've got Halloween, The Thing, Escape from New York. Brent, I know you've seen Christine and Starman, Big Trouble, They Live.
I've seen all these but Starman, so I'm in. I can rank it.
All right, where do you, David? Where would you put it?
It's in the top half. I think, honestly, I don't know if I may not. I mean, I'd have to really compare. I might like this more than The Thing. I think
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean,
that's heavy, man.
The Thing is fine, but like, I don't know.
My body, my soul just left my body for a second there.
This is fine.
I don't know.
I mean, it's so low budge, and just I don't know. There's more going on here. I enjoy it a lot. Like, yeah, I don't know. all these movies back from back then. I mean, they're just it's hard to, there's not a clear like winner or loser in a lot of ways. I mean, there's obviously like the upper tier, but yeah, no, really, yeah, this is up there. This is up there for me. Big fan. I don't know.
All right.
I don't want to give it a number. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say. Like,
I think you already
Sure.
did. Didn't you say like 9.5? You were.
I'm not gonna
promising
on
you
the
were
ReconCinema
promising
scale.
like a 9.5.
Yeah.
well, we haven't talked the scale.
Oh, okay,
let's
sorry.
do it. We'll do them both here.
No, this is a solid 8 right here. This is it. Like, this is a big movie right here. Yeah, Ghost Story 8.0. Here we go.
8.0. That's a high rank for David Munchak.
I never go past 7, I think. So here, welcome the fog.
All right, Brensky, what about you? Where do you where do you rank it amongst the Carpenter films?
Well,
Just your personal
okay.
choice.
Yeah, when we're talking about the Carpenter films, I'm only talking about the movies from Assault on Precinct 13 until They Live.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm not counting in here.
Agreed. I would throw In the Mouth of Madness in there, but that's, the only other one.
I don't know. You can do that. But I would put it, I haven't seen Christine in a long time, and I haven't seen Starman in a long time, but I would put it ahead of Assault on Precinct 13, Christine, Starman, Prince of Darkness.
See?
But then all the others I would put ahead of it for me. So that's Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble, and They Live. Like, I think are all, for me, I prefer them. I have more fun with those. But this one was a pretty awesome surprise. And I like Christine and Starman in those movies a lot.
Sure.
So I like all those movies I listed, every single one of them, I enjoy thoroughly.
So good.
Yeah.
They're
I mean,
good.
that's looking through that run, that's a insane run of movies.
Yeah.
So, that would be, I'm trying to remember Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I don't really remember that one. So
neither does a lot of other people.
Yeah.
It's Chevy Chase and Daryl Hannah. I think it was like 93.
Oh,
That's a John
I-
Carpenter movie.
now
Yeah.
I remember it.
Yes.
That was John Carpenter.
It is very un-Carpenter like, but it is him. I can't imagine.
I liked Ghost Dad better then. So
I
saw
can't
Ghost Dad in
imagine.
the theater.
Yeah.
nice.
I can't imagine Chevy and John Carpenter was a good mix back
No.
then, especially, but who knows? All right. So what do you rank it on the ReconCinema scale? David gives it an 8.0. Where does Brent Hutchins stand?
I'll give it a 7.3.
Oh,
7.3.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Now, if we go ranking all the other Carpenter movies as we do them over the next few years, don't call me out on the rankings if it doesn't follow suit with what I just said.
You know what? It's of the moment. It's how it feels to you right
That's how you
now.
feel, right?
Yeah.
I'm giving it a 7.3.
I mean, listen, I want to watch They Live again, like immediately. Like, I want to, of all the movies you just listed, I'm like, oh well, They Live. Like, that's.
You can. I have it. It's on
Yeah.
Apple. You can watch it on my Apple.
Oh, don't.
We don't promote illegally sharing
we don't do that.
passwords here. We would never
That's
do
not what I
such a
said. I said you're part of my family and watch it on the.
You
watch
are
it on
my
the
brother.
That's you guys. Peek behind the curtain. You guys, despite the different last names, are actually brothers. So
We're
It's
blood
true story.
brothers.
Yeah.
We grew up together in
Yep.
Yeah,
Texas.
correct. Correcticus.
All right. I'm gonna say this is, having seen it again recently and really enjoying it. I think this is top 5, maybe number 6 for me of Carpenter films. I'm a huge Thing fan, so nothing's gonna replace that for me. That's my number 1. Then I'm gonna go Big Trouble just for pure fun. Halloween, a super close, close number 3, right behind Big Trouble. Escape from New York, right after that. And then I would probably say number 5 is The Fog. Followed very closely by Assault, Christine, They Live, are all kind of right around there. Prince of Darkness, it's been a minute since I've seen that, so I need to give that one another shot. But yeah, so right now I'm going to say The Fog breaks into the top 5 for me.
Nice. Wow. I like that.
And I will say I'll probably give it a 7.8.
Whoa.
So,
All right.
sandwich right between you guys.
Huzzah.
There was I really love the tone of this one. It didn't feel like quite as perfect as some of those other Carpenters for me, of Halloween,
Sure.
The Thing, especially. Like those are like perfect tones. This was maybe like a half notch off for some reason, and I couldn't pinpoint why, but maybe it's just that so early in his career, maybe he just, obviously with the problems that he had and going back and reshooting so much of it, that it is difficult to match that same tone when you're right in the middle of production. So to have to go all the way back in and redo it, that could have been what just shook it off for me a little bit. But yeah, I think I would say that the movie holds up really well. Is it a little bit dated? Sure. But there's so much working for it that if you're looking for a traditional, straightforward horror ghost story movie, it's not going to get a lot better than The Fog.
Mm-mm.
No.
And
the special. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
no, I was just gonna say, like, there's not a lot of problematic things about it. It's like a straightforward story. Like I know we can, every movie we have to acknowledge the problematic elements of the things of the time. It's like, well, this doesn't really have that. It's just nice to be like, it's just a straightforward ghost story movie. And,
Yeah.
Like we don't need we don't have to once again point out the sexism and racism and homophobia that is rampant through every goddamn script from the 70s. But I don't think you really see that in much of Carpenter's stuff to begin with. So it's a story about people, and like that's what he just does so well. And like, yeah, this is like a refreshing look at that stuff. I don't know. So I was just happy about that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and he's got strong female characters here, especially with Stevie Wayne, and so there's a lot to that between Halloween and this and some of his other films that he's. He does have strong female leads, and especially with Jamie Lee, even though she's not really the lead. The only problematic thing is just the hopping into the sack with Tom Atkins. But you know what?
They're two consenting adults who had sex, and it wasn't like he seduced her. It just happened.
There was like, hey,
there's no problematic elements there at all.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Brent, you were going to say something of not so.
No, I was just going to kind of say, yeah, a lot of times in these older movies, like the special effects are things that kind of tend to draw me out of it, but I don't really feel like that's the case here. Some of the monster effects, maybe, or the makeup effects, but they're kind of quick and some of the lighting effects, but the fog effects and things like that, like all kind of work fine, so.
And
yeah, the effects are by Rob Bottin, who did the effects on The Thing. So one of the best in the industry. And, he retired very early in his career and doesn't even discuss the movie business anymore.
Really?
But was so good. Yeah, it was so great.
I just like how polite all those undead sailors were, where they just knock on doors all day.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, we come to kill you. Here's a question. So I read somewhere about this because they published a book based on the movie or in conjunction with the movie that clarifies this a little bit. But the 6 that the ghost sailors were going to kill, are they descendants of the original people that killed the sailors, or are they not?
No, they are. Yeah, I think there was some kind of they alluded to it in the movie. I think they said it, right?
I don't know if they said it outright. They alluded to it because in what I was reading, they said that the book clarifies it for sure.
Yeah,
that they are. But then I find that I call shenanigans a little bit, because there's kind of some weird tracking of people then if that's the case. But I found it interesting that could be that could be something that you could look at.
Well, it's convenient that 3 descendants were on the same boat then, like, and got
it is
murdered.
convenient, but it maybe it makes sense. They've just had it in their family, that.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's the babysitter and Andy and
Charles Cyphers. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it works better if it's vague and it goes unanswered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm less buying that they're just killing direct descendants. Although I would believe that a ton of the direct descendants probably live in the town.
100 years later, sure, of course.
Yeah.
Like that's not that long.
Yeah. No, it's really not. So like
100 years ago was 1921. Doesn't feel
get
like it.
But it seems like everybody's a direct descendant. That's
they're all related to each other.
So are they all a direct? Maybe that's it. Maybe just everybody in the town is
very inbred. It's a very inbred.
You know
town.
what? It would mean Jamie Lee Curtis is the safest person in that
true.
story because she doesn't live there. So
that's true.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But all right, cool. Well, very much enjoyed The Fog. Always love looking back at John Carpenter's work, especially his early work, which we still have a bunch to get through. So on the remainder of our 53-year contract, we have so many more to go. It's going to be great.
Yes.
But in the meantime, we have a fun month of Shocktober coming your way. So stay tuned, like we said, with some very special guests. Another special non-horror episode coming your way soon. And that's about it. I want to say quick thank you and some extra shout outs this week. So thank you to Curtis Moore for the poster. As usual, we always love your work and how you find ways to get us to recall the days where we were on set, just working our way into all these posters. So and thank you to our friend E.K. Wimmer for the theme music, like usual, and check out his podcast, Laser Graves. Always has some fun, interesting topics on his show. And some other friends of ours, Movie Muggins, who is somebody we interact with on Twitter quite a bit and Instagram, and they have a fun show, as well as our friend Jay Blake with Scored to Death, the podcast, and the book series, looking back at horror film scores over the whole course of mostly recent horror history. Recent meaning since the 70s, really, kind of like our show. But a fun book series and podcast. So check that out if you haven't. You can find those anywhere you get podcasts. And don't forget to check us out on social media. We're ReconCinema Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, whatever that other social media site is. And you can, of course, check out our archives at www.ReconCinema.com. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of plugging. I'm out of breath.
Jesus Christ.
Take a breath.
All right. Well, a fog is rolling in here to the studios, so I'm coming, David. I'm coming over into the booth. I need some snuggles until we get through this. So
always.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on ReconCinema.
Take care.
Bye now.